Thank you so much, Tripp, and congratulations to all the award winners and finalists. It's so inspiring to see these stories of people who are really making a difference in this state. Well, as most of you know, this is a gentleman who needs no introduction in this room or many rooms. Governor Riley and his wife Tunke served this state officially for 8 years, during which time Governor Riley passed the Education Improvement Act, and then they moved on to Washington, where they spent another 8 years with our country's education system, where you were Secretary of Education. And during that time, when you think of the initiatives launched, academic standards, raising those standards, improving instruction for the poor and the disadvantaged, expanding grants and loan programs to help more Americans go to college, so important, preparing young people for the world of work, and improving teaching, among just some of the areas that Secretary Riley fostered. Wherever he goes, Richard Wilson Riley, former South Carolina governor and U.S. Secretary of Education and grandfather of 10, wins respect for integrity and principled leadership and commitment to children. So it's my great opportunity now to do something that I love the most of all, is to do an interview, and especially with someone who has done so much for the state and the nation. Let me start with this question, Governor Riley. Through your lifelong work in education, this state has benefited in countless ways, and you have really been a role model. But what I would like to know is what motivated you to champion the field of education, and coming up the ranks, who was your personal champion?
Well, first of all, let me thank everybody for being here and congratulate those of you who are being honored. But I'm so proud of all of you. It's very positive. What works is so important. And thank you, SCETV, and Tripp DeBard and his group, and the Riley Institute, and all the staff. That's a very easy question for me to respond to. First of all, who were my role models? If I look at education policy, the first thing they tell you is don't mention your parents when you're giving your role model. Well, my father, as my friends from Greenville know, was the elected county attorney for a number of years, and as such represented Greenville School District. Big district, and getting involved in a lot of things. And I was a young lawyer coming up then, and I really got heavily involved in school matters from the very ground floor through him. If I looked at policy deals, a person that impacted me a lot over the years, many of you were way too young to remember it, was Terry Sanford of North Carolina. Was one of the first New South governors who really wanted to bring the South out of the hole. President Roosevelt said during the Big Depression that the major economic problem in in the country was the South. Poor jobs, poor people, cheap labor, cheap land. By the way, you all did a wonderful job with the Roosevelt series.
Yeah, well, we didn't do it. I can't claim
it was really good. I watched every one of them but one of them, and I might try to get
They're
you
on video.
Well,
video
good.
on demand.
But they were just wonderful. Anyhow, that's what was Roosevelt's observation. I was a student of history, and very interested in the history of South Carolina, of course. And we were really in a hole during that period of time. We had two systems, one white, one black. Very terrible, unfortunate, tragic period in terms of education. Coming along, we moved in the right direction in terms of one system. But we really, obviously, when I was elected governor, we had a lot to do to bring all that out of the hole and make South Carolina what we wanted to make it. Economic development, jobs, all of that was so important, and all that was directly connected to what we were going to do with public education. So I really was determined when I was governor and elected for a second term to really make a real move in education. I involved thousands of people in that effort, and I really think it became a movement. And all of you all, I'm sure in one way or another, were very much involved. It was all positive about public schools and what we could do, and it was some more funds. Controversial, but very exciting time, and that's what I was determined to do what I could to change the history of this state and move us into the future.
Governor Riley, you mentioned the Roosevelts, and it was interesting because Bob Schieffer on Face the Nation was watching as well. And he said the one common theme of all three of the Roosevelts, Teddy, Franklin, and Eleanor, was courage. And when I think of what you have done, there's a lot of courage involved, because go back to when you were governor and passed the Education Improvement Act. That was back in 1983. It wasn't the most popular because you were raising the sales tax, and yet this is an act that lives on today. Tell us about that time, how you were able to achieve bringing together all those people that you mentioned to overcome some hurdles, and how it's been able to continue.
Well, first of all, it was the right thing to do, and and you have to really believe in people, believe in public education, the importance of public education, just like everybody in this room does. And I was into that. Tunky was a very strong influence on me, and she and I worked together on all of these issues. But it was not difficult. There were a lot of controversy, and those of you who were involved in all that remember that. But the meetings we had, the first meeting we had in Charleston, big school, I spoke, the superintendent spoke, a business person spoke, a teacher spoke. We had 3,500 people. And we broke down in little groups, and then everybody worked together. Well, that happened in 4 big areas of the state, and then we were on TV, had road signs, we had a slogan, a penny for their thoughts, the their being the children's thoughts. And all of that really kind of got the people into it. And I don't care, and influencing what's happening with the governor and the legislature is important. But if the people are into something, it really happens. And this was really, I think, kind of a movement. The people were into it, little people, big people, everybody. And it really made it happen. It was not difficult for me because I believed in what we were about, and I was excited to see all the people coming together to improve public education. And we did, and I think it made a big difference, and I'm very proud of it.
And it's unusual for a program, though, to continue. How are we still feeling the effects of this program that you started with those folks
well,
in 1983?
I think we still do. We have a lot of things built into the EIA that involve people outside the government working with people in government to make change happen. What works is absolutely critical. You can have all the support in the world, but if you don't really try to move the funds and move the support into what really works, you really might be spinning your wheels. So what you all have been about in this particular effort really is the way to continually improve education. I was always big in terms of standards because that's the only way you could measure what was happening. And we were able then to move into standards, and I think that a lot of that is changing right now and probably should change, but I think that's very important for the people to see what's happening. And it's not a one-time deal. It's not like put the penny on and that's it. It's every year, and the EIA calls for revisiting that every year, just like we were looking at what works here. What is working in your district, what is working in your school and in your family, and really then put the emphasis on what really is making a difference.
What struck me by looking at the stories that we've seen represented in the finalists was the creativity and the innovation shown in each area, remarkable creativity. How can that be replicated across the state? How can we bring innovation truly to the state so that people feel they can stretch, they can reach out to try some new techniques while they're still having to meet these commitments?
Well, and I think a lot of these things that we're recognizing here today are examples of innovation and creation, Tripp, and looking at that. When we had Goals 2000 when I was in Washington, They had the governors that met in 1989 in Charlottesville and came out with goals. One of the things that we added, Bill Clinton and I added when it came to us on the executive side, we were ready to introduce the bill, was to add two things. We added foreign language, that had become such an important part of the future and part of the global requirements for education. And we added the arts and music. I was absolutely convinced that if we were going to have a quality education system in this country, state by state, and education is a state matter, that we had to put as a priority arts and music. A lot of talk now about the STEM schools, and I really believe in that, and that's great, the emphasis on science and technology, engineering, and mathematics. And then, as you well know, now there's a lot of talk about STEAM, that is putting arts in there too. And I think that's absolutely important. The innovation, Linda, creative thinking, creative use of young people's mind improvements, all of that is part of it. And we've got to keep doing that on through the years. You don't ever reach a point where you don't create any further. You keep innovation, keep creating. What works is part of that.
And you mentioned that education is a state matter. Many people say it's a local matter. How did you approach it when you were Secretary of Education? What is the most important role from the national perspective as well?
Well, education is a state responsibility. South Carolina, of course, it says that in our Constitution. It's been interpreted to mean minimal adequacy. That's inadequate in my judgment completely, but that has been the interpretation. We do need adequate, more than adequate, really, but that's part of it. It's a state responsibility. It happens on the local level. The local schools are absolutely critical because that's where education takes place. So as you point out, what's the important question is then what is the federal role? A lot of people think you have to be very careful about too much federal and not enough federal or whatever. I am a former governor and believe in state government and believe that the state absolutely should be in control of education, and everything we did in Washington really was looking at the state as being the moving party in education. We were a partner, but we were a junior partner. I think that's very important. It's so important for the country to set up goals for the country, vision for the country, special national needs. What are they? Well, you can think of a lot of them. Certainly poverty, poor kids is one of them. And that's Title I. But Title I then goes down to the states and to the schools. And it's done on the local level, really. But it is a federally funded program to help this nation with poor kids get a quality education. And the same with disabled kids and so forth. So I think it's very important for the federal government to have a role and to support nationally, but then for the real job and the function to take place on the state and local level, and that's where we all ought to be attentive to making sure we do a good job on the state and local level.
Fascinating. You mentioned partnership with the state and the local communities. In the same thinking, how can you work with school districts and teachers to partner with the community? We've seen these wonderful community partnerships. What is the role of the community in the education of the children?
Well, of course, the community is absolutely essential. Parents are critically essential. One of the key words I use all the time when I think of education is the word collaboration. Collaboration of teacher with teacher, teachers working together inside the school setting, teacher with principal, principal with community, teachers with business people, parents with teachers, parents with children, students with students. If you can get that positive attitude in the school to where everybody is working together, helping each other, listening to each other, you really have a much more effective system. That then feeds out into the community. If you have a community that is supporting quality public schools, is positive about it, and not bad-mouthing everything they can find to bad-mouth about education, but being very positive and hopeful and improving, changing for the right reason. That kind of thing takes place with community leadership, the school board, so very important. All of the school leadership, the state board, very important. I heard three of the state candidates for state superintendent the other night in Greenville, and all three of them did a very good job. So I feel like we're heading for a good future in public education in South Carolina, and I feel good about that.
And let's talk for a moment about that future. Where do you see public education in South Carolina in the next 10 years, in the next decade?
Well, we have so many interesting things going on. The Common Core standards is a big issue out there, a national issue, of course. I'm on the board of ACT, so I have a bias in that direction. But I am very much into standards, and I'm very much into assessment. I'm into assessment more than I am testing. The idea of having competence measured, we talk about formative testing, testing that takes place as students learn, not testing but assessment. And you can do that with computer design, where the teacher can have a computer connected to all the students and know exactly what everybody's learning all the time. Technology is amazing where it's going and where it's been in terms of education. But we're going to develop, and that's in the process now, in a lot of interesting ways, of having a formative assessment where you don't wait till the end of the week. You don't wait till the end of the semester or the end of the year to find out what somebody learned, and then they cram from the night before. You have education taking place every classroom, every day, every afternoon in quality after-school programs. So you see all that good things are happening, and technology is involved in so much of it. So really I think we're at the place now where we are really ready to move out. And I see so many good things happening. I think of the Diversity Leadership Initiative that the Riley Institute is involved with. I mentioned in the beginning how important learning to work together and study together and help each other. The Diversity Leadership Initiative, and Linda is a graduate of that, deals with that issue, and it makes diversity a very positive subject where everybody really benefits by other people's ideas and their background and so forth. So I think we're moving in that direction. We've got a lot of things going in a good direction, but I would hope we all keep very positive about where we're going. I've read, CEO sent me a book recently, The Positive Dog, and I doubt if many of you have read it, but a lot of CEOs are giving it to their top people to read. It's really like a children's book, and it's about two dogs. One of them is positive, one of them is negative. And obviously the positive dog wins out on just about everything, and the negative dog doesn't. But then in the end, it shows you, based on research, Bill, based on research, how that benefits. A positive person lives longer, is happier in their marriage, does better in their job, in their school and everything else. And I think that's real important for those of us who support public education to have a positive role that we all share, being excited about what we're doing as these young children learn together.
Governor Riley, I can't think of a more positive person than this. Thank you.